And one of the biggest topics that's come in lately is the whole wanting more understanding about emotional eating. And I love that because it is, well, it's a big deal, right? Really, emotional eating leads to so many of the challenges that we have with weight loss, or an inability to lose weight, no matter doing all sorts of good things. So I'm just checking the screen here, and it's looking like it's a little bit jumpy. So hopefully that clears out. We are hardwired in. And, I wanted to talk today really around like what it is, how to identify it, and some strategies to start to break free of it. Emotional eating, it really does differ from physiological hunger, or for eating for physiological reasons, right? I'm sure everybody who tunes in, you've had the feeling in your tummy of hunger pains when you know you're hungry, right? You know that there's been a significant amount of time since you've last eaten, and you can tell that your tummy is letting you know that it's time to eat again. What's interesting is that when you're hungry like that, it's amazing how if you're busy or if you're loving the task that you're doing, you can actually just go, you know what, I'll wait. I'm going to grab food later. And with emotional hunger, it comes on so quickly sometimes. It can just be like all of a sudden you just want something salty, something sweet, something creamy, something chocolatey, and you're kind of willing to do whatever it takes to get it. And so I had a very different understanding of what emotional eating was a long time ago. To me, emotional eating was, I had this picture in my mind of a woman who would like drive to the store or a convenience store and fill a basket with like chips and ice cream and chocolate bars, and and then you'd come home and you'd eat all of it. And I didn't realize that was actually one version of emotional eating, but there's another one, right? The other one is it's more insidious. It's like where you're just maybe feeling lonely or tired, or like you need a break. And so you might just go into your kitchen and maybe you had dinner half an hour ago or an hour ago, but you feel like something to eat. And so it's very common to find yourself opening up the pantry or the cupboards, or opening up the fridge and the freezer, and then going back to the pantry trying to find that perfect thing. And you often can grab something, say cookies, and have a couple, but they don't actually do the job, right? You still feel hungry for some reason. And the problem with this is that so often we are trying to use food or wine or beer, whatever your alcohol of choice is, right? So often we're trying to use these other things to distract ourselves from what we are truly experiencing in life. And I guess it's interesting because for women, I really believe that right now, wine has become the most socially acceptable way to kind of numb out from what's going on. And it's one thing to do it totally consciously. It's another thing when it's like a really frequent habit. And so when you identify, or when you can start to become aware that emotional eating is happening in your life, a lot of times you're not even aware. And if you aren't aware, you can't change anything. So the first step is always trying to figure out, well, do I emotionally eat? And some people are really good at it, right? They know that they can identify it as that. They self-identify as that. Whereas I, 6-7 years ago, I wouldn't have. I would have said that I was eating really well and I didn't know why I couldn't lose weight. That really was my story. And I would say that probably while holding a glass of Shiraz and in the other hand, some chocolate. But I just thought that those were such small little indulgences and small little treats. Like really, how could that be, impacting my body in such a way that I was hanging on to this excess weight? Well, it was. And it was because it wasn't just a once in a while thing. It was like nightly. So what I want to talk about is really to give you some cues or some abilities, some ways for you to identify the difference between emotional hunger and physiological hunger. All right, so if you want to grab a pen and paper, go do so just quickly, maybe able to jot some notes down, because again, you can't change it unless you are aware of it. So I kind of have alluded to this already, but here's the thing. When you are physiologically hungry, like when you truly have real hunger going on, like your body needs some nourishment, it's amazing how all sorts of healthy choices feel really desirable, right? It's like, I know in the middle of the day, if I've been working for quite some time and I feel hungry, I love the idea of having a salad with some protein on it, or, going to grab a wrap, maybe. Like, the healthier choice, even a veggie plate, is really appealing to me. Whereas when you're emotionally hungry, the healthy choices don't really seem as appealing, right? The healthy choices, you kind of don't crave kale when you're emotionally hungry. You don't crave carrot sticks. Again, you're looking for that comfort food, that soothing food. So that's one way to know. If if you're like, well, I don't think I'm an emotional eater, but if you say things to yourself like, oh, I feel like something to eat, well, feeling like you want to have something to eat is very different than feeling hungry. So even your language can start to give you cues as to what emotional hunger, when it's present in your life. The other thing is, again, that sort of how you're able to cope with it. When you're physiologically hungry, there are times when I know I'm hungry, but I love what I'm doing so much. I'm like, that can wait, right? I don't want to take time out of my day or stop the task that I'm doing because I love what I'm doing, and I'll consciously put it off until later, and I don't feel bad about it, right? It totally feels like I'm in control. I don't have any franticness around it. It's like, oh yeah, I'm hungry. I can recognize it, but I'm going to deal with it in a little bit when I'm done this thing that I'm really enjoying doing. When you're emotionally hungry, it can come on so quick, right? It's like, you can't escape it. It's like this driving sort of force that makes you want to scavenge and pick. And even when you do eat something, it doesn't satisfy it. And the reason is food cannot fix your emotions. Food cannot stop. It cannot fix whatever it is you are feeling. The most common reason that we want to use food is to get away from whatever is going on in that moment in our life. And it's fleeting, right? So the minute that, when you eat for true hunger reasons, it feels good, right? I never finish a good, healthy meal and have like shame or guilt or regret about the food I've just eaten, ever. Right? When I'm eating because I'm hungry, I usually love the choices I've made. I usually love how I feel afterwards. I'm able to stop when I'm full. But emotional eating is really different. Often there are so many negative feelings associated after you're done with the emotional eating episode. And that's how women beat themselves up, right? You can feel guilty. You can then be like, oh, frustrated. Why did I do that? I know better. How come I know better, but I don't do better? Sometimes you end up going on to eat more after you've, kind of slipped or started because it feels like you can't stop. There's a sense of feeling out of control with emotional eating. Whereas when you're eating because you're hungry, you can feel really in control, right? It doesn't feel like it has that like undercurrent emotional edge to it. And that's where, I want to bring your attention, right? At some point, the only way you can get off the emotional eating roller coaster is to start asking yourself, what is it I'm afraid to feel? What is it that I am trying so hard to deny my experience of? And sometimes it's really uncomfortable to ask yourself these questions, right? It's often why we can't cure our own problems. It's why we need support from other people sometimes. It's because we don't have the time, or we won't make the time to ask ourselves the hard questions. And if we do ask the hard questions, often we won't make the time to answer them. And this is the critical part, when you wake up, right? When you decide to get real with yourself and go, I don't want to live like this anymore. Something needs to change. Well, you can't change physiological hunger, right? That's a thing. We need food to survive, and we need to eat it, several times throughout the day to satisfy our hunger requirements. But when you learn how to start feeling your feelings, when you learn how to get present with your truth, when you learn how to tap into the courage that is sometimes needed to face the hard things in your life, that is the way you crack open and really start to hop off the hamster wheel of emotional eating. Because what needs to happen then is, well, you got to learn how to get those unmet needs met, right? So often we're eating emotionally because we feel discouraged, depressed, angry, resentful, lonely, there's a whole host of reasons, right? Maybe we're nervous. There's nervous eaters, stress eaters. You eat when you're tired. You eat when you don't want to do a task at work. You eat when it's 3 o'clock because everybody else is going for coffee at 3 o'clock. You eat at night when you watch TV, right? So there's emotional eating, and then there's emotional eating that gets combined with one of our habits. And so that's how you want to start to break the cycle. At some point, you're gonna, like, the messages get louder, okay? Like, they just do. And I'm pretty sure that if you're watching this, if you're watching the replay or you're catching this video at some point in the future, you're watching it for a reason. I cannot tell you how many times I, was struggling with something in my life, and then boom, kind of a message appeared or a nudge appeared, or I got some, a random way of getting some information about something that I was feeling challenged by. And it made all the difference. But often those messages were there all along. I just wasn't willing to tune in yet. I wasn't willing to really pay attention because I didn't actually want things to change that much. You see, the thing is that we actually get something out of being emotionally, driven, right? When we are eating for emotional reasons, for those brief moments, you do get the escape. You do get the relief. You do get the distraction. I mean, that's what it gives us. That's what happens. There's some sort of reward that comes with it. So even though we don't like the fact that we do it, we're getting something from it that's fleeting. And so the goal is to try to figure out, what else do you need to do for yourself to get those unmet needs met, right? If you're tired at night, why do we stay awake and watch, episodes of Netflix, binge watch it when really you just need to go to bed? Right? Like, and this is something that happens. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I've heard that story. And I hear things like, well, that's the only time at night that's me time, or that's the only time I have to decompress. And I'm like, that's the time at night that you are totally self-sabotaging what you need most, which is to take care of yourself. And to take care of yourself often means putting your own self to bed, not eating, a bag of chips, not eating a row of cookies, or a bag of chips and a row of cookies and then some ice cream. And even if you're not eating that kind of junk, even if you're like making fruit salad or having some yogurt, or the thing is if you eat beyond what your body can handle, your body is so smart, it'll still convert it to fat, right? That's just what a body does. I mean, your body is brilliant. And so, oh, hey, Leona, thanks for joining. I'm just talking about emotional eating right now and why we do it, and really how to start getting awareness that you're doing it. And so, yeah, even if you're putting good things into your body, healthy things, if you're doing it for emotional reasons, you're still engaging in that habit of emotional eating. And, I don't know. I mean, maybe, if you watch this, chime into the comments and tell me what it feels like. I've got some notes written down here, and it's, it's interesting. Somebody asked, how do I avoid sugar without feeling like I'm depriving myself? And again, that's an emotional, like the belief and the thought and the feeling that somehow saying no to sugar is a deprivation. That's just a belief system. But if you're used to satisfying your emotional, if you're used to sort of fixing some of those uncomfortable emotions with sugar, and now you stop doing it, well then yeah, it is going to feel like you're depriving yourself, unless you find something else to do that gives you that sense of distraction. Maybe it's a warm bath, maybe it's a hot shower, maybe it's curling up in bed with a good book. Maybe if you're lonely at night, you're proactively managing your calendar and you're getting out a few times a week to meet people. Maybe if things are challenging for you with parenting, maybe you're learning how to join a few parent support groups, or maybe you're tapping into something. But the goal is that you become proactive about finding another resource for yourself, as opposed to relying on that temporary satiation with food. And I won't pretend it's easy. It's not, right? But it's like sometimes you have to do the things that you don't necessarily feel like doing, because you never change the crave, or you never crave the change you're creating. You crave what you used to do, and you need to move forward, right? You have to believe that there's something else that's going to be better for you, and that it's going to be worthwhile to kind of go through the transition. And I mean, we're human. None of us like to go through change that much. Some people are better at it than others. Some people are really resistant to it. So you kind of know your own self. But yeah, Leona, exactly. Sounds like redefining what brings us joy. Totally. I had a client once who drank, I think, 3 or 4 cans of Coke a day because it really brought her joy. She had, 4 kids at home that she was homeschooling, running a company, and that was like her thing, right? And now she doesn't drink pop at all. But at the beginning, she truly did not know if she could pull herself away from this thing that was bringing her joy. For women, for many women, that's the idea of a glass of wine or 2 or a bottle, often throughout the week. It could be that, you don't know how if you have to give up chocolate. And the thing is a lot of times we attached all or none. It's like, well, I'm never going to be able to eat chocolate again, or I'm never going to be able to drink wine again. And that's not true. But when you're doing that and you're bringing mindfulness to it and consciousness to it, it's a completely different experience than doing it for emotional reasons. I hope that makes sense, because it's really that piece of it that is so critical. It's understanding why you do what you do in the moment when you're craving it so much. And I will be the first to say again that, the moment that I had the dawn of recognition that I was soothing loneliness and feeling isolated and feeling scared and feeling unsuccessful and like a failure at life, in my marriage, in a million different things. This is years ago now. I cried hard, and I cried for a long time, but I did not cry forever. And that's the other thing I think a lot of people worry about too. It's like, oh my God, all of my emotions are in this box, and I'm going to keep them in this nice tight little box because then I can keep the lid on it. And God knows that's like Pandora's box. If I open up that box, I might never come out of that box. I might just be miserable or feeling these intense feelings of pain for a really long time. The thing is though, right? Feelings are fleeting. Feelings are meant to move through us, and we're not supposed to get stuck in them. But often we have emotional habits. I talked about habits on last week's show of Get Real with Jen. And we have behavioral habits, we have emotional habits. And so sometimes our emotional eating is accompanied by an emotional habit. And so we really have to separate both to fix the problem. And yeah, I just think of the last time you felt like completely excited and elated, or even terrified and scared, or even so devastated and heartbroken. You didn't stay in that state. You might feel it and feel it intensely, but you are going to come through it. And so I think that when we can understand that is not going to be permanent, right? That we don't have to live with all or none, never, always, because those are really hard rules, right? If I was to live under the rule of I am never, ever going to have a glass of wine ever again, well, then it could feel like deprivation, right? If, until it's a conscious choice, until I'm willingly yeah, no, I just don't want to put anything in my body that I don't like or that doesn't make me feel good. That's kind of my rule around sugar. Unless it's homemade, unless it's made with love, I kind of don't really want to put anything in this body that doesn't make me feel good, and sugar doesn't make me feel good. But a long time ago, it certainly did. I liked it. I didn't have any, I had a relationship with it, because so often what we're doing with food is we're filling a gap in our life. And often that gap is, I won't say often, but it could be love, it could be companionship, it could be friendship, it could be, what's it called? When somebody's there for you, right? It's reliable, you can count on it, it's within your control. And so it's never just this simple fix. I'm super excited because if you're watching this now or tuning in during the month of March, I've got an amazing project that's going to be revealed in April, where I've got a lot of experts who are coming on board to talk with me about emotional eating. And they're amazing interviews that I know you're going to learn a ton from. Here's the thing, food is meant to nourish us. And one of the ways you can check in if you're emotionally eating is to ask yourself, is every bit of food, is every bite that I take, is it nourishing my body in the best available way, best possible way? And when you're not. But the goal is to say, okay, well, I want to start to get a handle on this. I believe that it's going to be good for me to get a handle on it. And so even just to get a piece of paper, and on a piece of paper, just write down the question, what is it that I'm afraid to feel? And just be curious about it. This is one exercise you can do. What is it that I'm pretending to not know that I actually know? and write your answers down. Because we always have a deep inner truth about what's really going on for us. Just often we've learned to like shut that voice down, numb our sort of quiet or intuition, and just kind of live flatline, coping, dealing, suffering, emotionally eating, keeping everything status quo, not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting to feel, enduring, tolerating. It's not fun, right? I'm a person who is, I would way rather have the highs and lows in life, because I know if I go down to a 1 of like sorrow and misery and devastating heartbreak or whatever it is I'm feeling, then I know that I can also go right up to a 10 and feel immense joy and love and passion for people and my life and experiences. And that's way better for me than just living at a flat line of 5. So if you have comments, if you are struggling with emotional eating, feel free to direct message me. Feel free to put a comment into this thread. Maybe share what it's like for you as you're starting to break the cycle of emotional eating and becoming aware. And again, remember, this is a process. It took me over, a year to really disentangle emotional eating from my life and bringing a ton of mindfulness and consciousness to why I was doing what I was doing, and getting really clear about that and not having it remain a hidden habit. All right, that's it. 20 minutes goes by like that, I tell ya.